This week on Queen's Conversations, join your hosts Lucia Dragos, Noran Omar, and me, John Collins, as we explore the impact of the COVID regulations on the well-being of our children. Although we are gradually freeing ourselves from the grip of this deadly virus, the year-long isolation of the lockdown may have created physical and mental issues for young people. We'll review what to look for, where to go for help, and what some groups are offering as unique therapies in this episode titled Children and the New Normal. Our guests include Dr. Larry Gruber, Chief Executive Officer of Transitional Services for New York, Mariana Sanchez, Artistic and Executive Director at Dance Matters, New York City, and Stephen Cardona, Musical Theater Teacher at House Astoria. And now, here's Queen's Conversations.
For over a year, we have followed COVID restrictions designed to prevent transmission and reduce fatalities. But the resulting isolation and anxiety could also produce mental and physical effects on young people.
As we consider entering a new normal, including a full return to schools in the fall, it is important to consider the impact of these COVID restrictions may have had on our children's mental health. Dr. Larry Gruber will offer us some insights into those issues.
We'll also talk with some leaders from organizations that offer uncommon and fun forms of therapy for children. Let's begin with Dr. Larry Gruber. Doctor, what impacts can all the isolation and anxiety caused by the lockdown produce on the mental and physical health of young people?
Well, it definitely has had an impact on both the physical health of a young child or a young adult and the mental health aspects of the young child or young adult. They're talking about a 25% increase in psychiatric symptoms in kids that are in high school. Their social isolation was a major issue. Lack of physical activity, lack of the stress that was going on at home as well. Parents lost their jobs. Many of them, or were not working, or were working remotely and were very stressed by that. So they didn't have as much patience with the child that they had to be around full time and try to work and try to get everything done. So there was a major impact on the kids and trying to get that back to quote unquote a normal routine. And that was really the issue is making it a normal routine is key for the kids. The other piece is that the kids often, as in any family situation, take their cues from their parents and the family that are surrounding them. So if they lost their job or they were having financial stressors or the parents were more stressed because they weren't able to go out or exercise or do whatever, there is an impact on the kids. And that is tremendously problematic. Whereas kids would have a break typically if they went to school or their social activities or whatever.
So art and music is definitely the way an individual expresses themselves, especially children, either it being mentally, physically, and emotionally. Stephen, I know that the House Astoria had classes throughout all of COVID and prior to COVID. Can you tell us why you thought it was important for the art school to continue through COVID? And has there been a change with the students interacting with prior to COVID and in COVID classes?
You know, one of the main messages we've heard from our parents has been, thank you so much for keeping us dancing. Thank you so much for staying with them. This was the only normal thing we kept through the entire year. We were able to transition to virtual classes over a weekend. So we closed on a Friday, and Monday morning we were already virtually with all of our students. We had a 100% retention for about 2 months, and then it started declining, right? Students that were not interested in being on the screens, parents that lost their job, that couldn't continue doing extracurricular activities. But in the end, we've actually learned from our students the different ages, like the doctor was saying, were affected differently. So we saw the most affected, were the youngest ones in terms of their dance relationship with us. The little ones did not want to do video classes, but they were happy to be with their parents, potentially at home. But then the older students, the high school students, um, we saw a lot more depression and conflict at home, and just not wanting to be even in their dance classes. They didn't want to move, even if it was offered to them. And even after we opened in person, we found out that a lot of our older students decided not to go back in person to their classes, which was surprising. But I do think, a few things had changed. And from them just being home for so long, they've found a safe space, or maybe they were afraid to go back and they just decided to stay home. But dance certainly is a creative environment where you can come and express your emotions. And we've created an environment where they feel safe and they find joy. A lot of the conversations with the staff throughout the year was like, we just need to keep them dancing. And not that we didn't want to do the technical part of our training, but it was very important to us to just give them a space to dance and be happy and be joyful, and maybe open the conversations if they were feeling afraid or they didn't want to come outside. I hear from the fear of the parents who only wanted to do outdoor classes. We transitioned from our virtual classes in, late spring and summer. We transitioned to open to in person in September, but a lot of the families weren't ready to come in person. So we've actually been teaching virtually, in person, outdoors, and a few families created their pot classes. So we've done all of the offerings that you can imagine, because also we had to meet the parents where they needed to be. And so we've kept them dancing, and we've understood what the parents stood. And the main message has been, thank you for staying with us. Thank you for giving them some normalcy into their lives and opening the floor for joy, basically, in their lives. Because everything else seemed not normal and everything else seemed scary. A few of the students were afraid to come outside. A few of the families were afraid to come indoors. So it's been, Dance at Dance Matters has been really an incredible space for our students to come every week, see their same teacher that they love, and kind of give them once a week an experience that they had even prior, right? We still have masks, but we're not able to be in the classroom. We had 4 outdoor recitals last weekend, which in October, I was thinking about the end of the year and not knowing what we were going to do, because normally we do big productions in the theater. And we were able to bring our entire community together. It was a full day, and the parents were so grateful. They were like, we needed this as a community so badly. We needed to feel some sort of celebration for our children, for their work. We haven't seen the parents in the longest time, so we've just created the space for them to be a community, and it all revolves, thankfully for us, around dance. So we've been just a supportive extra service for our parents, so that the children, can have a space for creativity, for expression, for friendship, for community, seeing that everything else seemed to be crumbling or just being incredibly complicated around them. And like the doctor said, potentially also at home, it was incredibly stressful. So just to have that hour, 2 hours, some of the kids dance 10 hours a week with us, to forget about all of that and continue their art with us was really, really helpful.
Larry, what kinds of signs or symptoms or behaviors can parents and eventually teachers look for as indicators that maybe a child is suffering some distress?
I think the parents are going to be looking for like a clingy type of behavior, a fear of exploring the world, which is not typical for a child. They usually would be willing to explore and move out to see different things. And children are becoming a lot more clingy. I think that there's been a rise in substance abuse issues with the teenage population, and everybody's going to have to be aware of that piece, just like there was an increase in substance abuse in the adult population. People were using that as a mechanism to cope. It's fair to say that the kids or the young adults are doing the same thing. So I think you're looking at period of time where people are going to have a difficult time letting go of maybe some of the safety that was created for them, that had to be created to keep them away from the virus. And now we've got to start to let go. And I do believe in that transitional model, as you know, we run transitional services, doing it a little bit at a time. I think the dance that was discussed is amazing, but throwing people, it would just caution people throwing people right back into it. So that's why I like the online stuff to begin with, then bringing them back to the classroom a little bit at a time, and eventually people will get back into the world that we knew before the pandemic.
Thank you.
Stephen, Mariana was mentioning that less children wanted to join the online classes. Did you notice that as well when it comes to the art house in Astoria? Can you share your experience working with children?
Sure. Yeah, so I work at House Astoria, and I teach a musical theater class here. And as soon as we hit the pandemic, I noticed right away that my students were craving something. They wanted to come back and be in class. And so right away at the very top of it, we had no problem bringing back our kids. In fact, our parents were so excited that we were offering classes. It really happened around after, when we pick up usually in September to start our regular season. That's when the registration dropped a little bit because people were starting to get that Zoom fatigue. But we've been doing our best to really make sure that we're finding new ways to engage with our students to help increase that attendance.
And do you think they were more engaged as they got sort of used to as the time went by, or did you see any change in the children from in person to online?
Good question. So I teach a variety of students. So I teach anywhere from elementary, middle, and high school online during the pandemic, which was crazy to have that range. And really, just like a teaching styles change, same thing with what I noticed in who was affected and who was gravitating towards it. So for elementary school students, I noticed that the in was very different for them, that those students really needed just a sense of like acceptance, belonging. They needed a lot of positive feedback from them, and that is something that really engaged them. With my middle school students, it was they just wanted some sense of normacy, so I tried to keep it consistent what it had been in the past. So like auditions that we had, cast lists, anything that felt normal to them. And then the high schools, it was all about engaging their own creative selves, right? So allowing them to give them a project and say, okay, now I want you to make your own TikTok lesson out of this. So it just varies based off of the student and the age.
That sounds very interesting and fun. I even wanted to learn that class. Mariana, I actually had a question in regards to what you were mentioning about giving students a bunch of options, either in being virtual, outdoors, or in person. Did you see a change in, like you mentioned, the mental health of the high school students? You said that they went into depression. Did you see a change once you guys started accepting the students and doing virtual?
Yes, absolutely. I think it was very clear that, especially that older tier of students, those preteens and teens, were incredibly grateful and happy to be in the room. We actually have a couple of students that are still fully remote up until now in June, and you could see the frustration and the sadness a bit. They were happy to be dancing, but you could see they were ready to be done. I think our last student that was remote, she will be coming in person in the summer, but I did see their spirits change entirely and their investment in the class just being in person. For that group was especially hard to be online, especially we're a movement art, and so we're in New York City, so our students were in their bedrooms trying to do class. So that was probably also frustrating, because if you think about the little ones were in their living rooms and happy dancing around, but the preteens and teens are so much more self-conscious of being dancing in front of the entire family while the family's having dinner or sitting at the table. So they will wanted to go into their bedrooms, which are limited in size in the city. And so they couldn't really do their full class full out. And I think that was frustrating. And if you think that, kids at that age they want to be outside with their friends and doing their things and be more independent, and they were stuck at home with their parents, which is probably the last thing they wanted to do. So yeah, I did see a dramatic change, especially for that age.
Let me follow up with Larry again. Larry, if we do notice some behaviors that indicate a child is under stress, what resources can we apply to get some help?
There are children's services, there are children's mental health services throughout the city of New York. You can get a list of them by calling 311 or the City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, or going online and looking for that. There are helplines for kids and for adults as well. I mean, everybody is, when Stephen and Mariana were talking, kids are people too. That's what I was thinking, and the adults were having some of the similar problems. I remember going to a wedding just recently and being able to feel free to actually dance again, which was a nice feeling. Or go to the theater and see, or a movie theater at least, and participate in the arts, and how freeing that was. And kids are people too, and they're going to need that, to feel that freedom over time. But again, they'll take their cues from their parents. But if the parent is noticing a difference in behavior, much different than what the child was like before the pandemic, they should reach out for services and not feel that there's anything that can't be achieved by going to therapy.
Mariana, you shared that a lot of the children live in small apartments and it was hard to dance. We had someone on the show that was a dancer. I mean, he's an adult, and he shared that it was even hard for him. He couldn't rehearse, he couldn't practice, and we all know as a dancer, you have to practice your art, your skills. So I imagine how hard it's for children. If for adults it's hard. But I know none of you are therapists or art therapists, but can anyone speak a little bit about how art and music can be therapeutic to children and young adults, that way of expressing themselves, and maybe what other children can do, or other parents that their children are not enrolled in classes, maybe what they can do at home?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can go first. Or Steve, you can also share. I think, if the arts are nurtured and brought to the children the proper way, it is a vessel for creativity and for expression. And so another thing that we did is allow a little bit more of improvisation and not like free dancing at the end of class, and just playing different music so that they could express their bodies in ways they felt they wanted to express them, and not necessarily with the very structured curriculum that sometimes a dance class has, which is necessary so that you can understand how to move your body in new ways and get stronger. But we build in longer periods at the end of every single class to improvise, where we would tell a story. Once upon a time, there were 5 pirates and they went into this adventure, and sometimes allowing them to bring in things to the stories on their own, and they became this like crazy creative stories. But then I think allowing them to find their voice through movement with music in a classroom with no judgment is absolutely necessary, I think, for humanity in general. But that is a great thing to do with children, just letting them pick, letting them express, letting them, feel free and explore, and for them to feel safe to do that.
So I don't know if any of you have kids who are like the squirrely type, the ones that just have so much energy, they just have to get out and they're just running around all over the place. That was definitely me when I was a little kid. And one of the great things about theater and that I do is we create kind of a safe space where they're not that weird ostracized kid who is constantly interrupting in the middle of class. No, like that's what we do. It's almost like a Montessori approach. It's very kinesthetic. It's about play to learn. And something that I have noticed within my kids, even during the pandemic and doing virtual teaching, is that what it does is it fosters this sense of community and belonging in a way that they're not the other. They are not different. They are just the same as everybody else. And being able to collaborate and create work and art together. I mean, I had a student who left and went to Hong Kong at the very beginning of the pandemic, and parents wrote to me and were like, our daughter is crying every day because she misses being with her friends. So I think above all else, yes, the artistry is there. Yes, I'm sure there is science. I mean, I know I've experienced how art has changed my life. But beyond that, I think it's the connection of community that these students really get from collaborating through art.
It's also a little odd to have a young child, really talk about their feelings. So to go ahead and use art or music or dance as a modality to go ahead and have children express themselves, it's so much less threatening. And I definitely believe in those modalities for children specifically. Also for people who are seriously and persistently mentally ill. They're not going to necessarily talk about their feelings, but we've used those modalities for them as well. And it's a completely different level of expression. One I wish that we could use more often with adults. But specifically for kids, they're not going to sit down necessarily and talk to you about daddy lost his job and what does this mean and all that stuff. But they will express it in other ways, and any way that they express it is important.
What advice would you give parents and potentially teachers in the near future in terms of general approaches to children as we approach the new normal? What can they look forward to doing?
Just like adults, I think everybody's looking forward to getting back to whatever we considered quote unquote normal before. But I think I'm definitely taking the approach with my staff and my clients and my family of doing things a little bit at a time. I'm not saying, rip off the mask and let's just all be great again. That's just not necessarily reality. There's a lot of I don't want to call it PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, with it, but people have certain feelings. They've just gone through 18 months of being locked down, isolated. To just all of a sudden have all that freedom can be a little bit scary. I think we need to do it a little bit at a time, and at the person's own pace, and making them feel safe. Specifically for kids, they need to feel safe. And just, I was actually thinking a lot about this as I was preparing for today. Just as we experienced people that got really sick or passed away from the pandemic, the kids did as well. They lost grandparents, they lost family members, they lost friends. They have to deal with all of that as well. To expect somebody to deal with that okay, it's over, the pandemic's over, let's just get back. That's not reality. It's going to take us some time to get back to that normal. I think it's going to take a good couple of months, if not a year or so. I'm hoping that, yes, we don't have to wear masks, and yes, we might need a booster shot, and yes, there's so many unknowns, but if we do it slowly, I think we're going to be a lot more successful and really taking a look at what that individual needs.
Yeah.
Great. I actually wanted a closing remark from Mariana and Steve. Is there any way that children can contact or join these classes to express themselves after realizing that this can be therapeutic for them?
Yes. So to access classes, dance classes with Dance Matters, you can go to dancemattersnyc.com. You can also find us on Instagram and on Facebook. Our phone number is 929-390-1809. You can send us a message or a text message and we will reply. And we would love to welcome you into a safe, creative environment so that the dancer within any children who's looking for this sort of expression can be nurtured for the years to come, and this specifically new year, as the doctor said, to come and start coming out of this in a slow, safe, beautiful way.
Stephen, just really quick, Astoria, Art House Astoria, do you have online classes or you're starting in person, and where people can go to join the classes?
Yeah,
We have
great
1 minute
question.
left.
Yeah, I'll go fast. So we actually do both right now. We're about to start on July 6th. I'm so excited. We're opening in person for the first time, which is going to be awesome. So we do many things. I teach musical theater. I also teach tap and hip hop. We also have visual art classes, which are going to be virtual. We also teach instruments, voice lessons, all that stuff. So you can actually access us either online at arthouseastoria.org, also info@arthouseastoria@gmail. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, so you can check us out there. We're a non-for-profit, so really affordable classes and lessons for your youngsters.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for all the guests, and that's it for today's show. We'll see you next time on Queen's Conversations. Bye for now.
Yo llegué aquí en el año de 1981, cuando yo tenía 20 años. Bueno, llegué con la mente de hacer mi transición de hombre a mujer, pero fue en ese mismo año cuando mi vida dio un giro que pues yo no esperaba que mi vida me cambiara así. Soy el gobernador Cuomo, al parecer vio todo mi trabajo comunitario. Me dice, Lorena, congratulations. Me dijo, yo tomé tu caso y yo he visto que tú has hecho una labor bastante grande por 20 años y tus arrestos, tus convicciones fueron en el pasado. Ahora puedo decir que me siento la mujer trans más dichosa, la mujer trans que ya no tenía que levantarse temprano para hacer prostitución, la mujer trans.
The history of ceramics goes back so far. It goes back to our development, and it's global. All over the world, people have found this material and understood that fire and clay make something special. I'm Grace Anker. I am a ceramicist, and I teach pottery.
The Romans believed in something called the numen. It was the spirit of a place or a thing. And I always felt like there were spirits inside the wood. I mean, this is something that we as humans have been doing since we first forged tools. And I mean, the tools that I'm using aren't really very different at all from the ones that they used in Egypt and Babylonia. This is knowledge that is passed on literally person to person. It's like this beautiful little ember that I feel like we have to keep taking care of it and passing it through the generations. I'm Deborah Mills. I'm a wood carving artist.